Hey everybody, it's me, Quince. Welcome to the sixth and final of my series of reviews for Season 2 of the Playdate, Panic's handheld gaming console. Every week this season, 2 brand new games from different developers appeared like magic on your Playdate system. Week 6's games are Black Hole Havoc and Taria Como. And these are the last ones, so let's see how this season takes us home. Black Hole Havoc is a puzzle game from Cosmic Brothers. Unlike most puzzle games, this one has a premise. As ridiculous as it may be, it is a premise. Black holes have begun emerging from the sky, threatening to destroy life on Earth as we know it. In order to combat this growing threat, you must shoot your own manufactured black holes back at them. It turns out that when 2 black holes of equal size meet, they negate each other and disappear, thus solving the problem. It's science! This game is sort of like Bust a Move or Puzzle Bobble or Snood, if you'd like, where you're aiming from the bottom in order to shoot at obstacles and clear them from your screen. However, unlike in those games where you're trying to match colors, here you're trying to match sizes. By default, the black holes you generate will be minuscule. You can inflate them or shrink them again with the A and B buttons, or by rotating the crank. You'll want to do this because you want to make your black holes as close in size to the ones you're hitting as possible. You have a little vial of black hole juice, or I don't really know exactly what it is, but that's a good enough description. It's displayed on the left side of the screen, and an amount of it is drained equal to the difference between the sizes of the colliding black holes. So the closer in size you make yours, the less liquid is drained. This is good because if that liquid runs out, it's game over. If you mess up really bad and shoot a tiny hole at a big hole or vice versa, or if you just shoot a black hole off into the distance and don't hit anything, you're likely to get an immediate fail. The basic challenge and strategy of this one then comes down to how well you're able to judge the sizes of things at a distance. You'll come up with vague ideas in your head of what a small, medium, or large black hole looks like, then do your best to match them up. That's easy enough, and while it's not easy to get it perfect every time, you should be able to get a great, or at least a not bad, almost every time you're doing this. So of course, the game will then throw some more complications at you to keep things interesting. Black Hole Havoc comes with a surprisingly extensive story mode featuring dozens of levels. Each set of levels takes place in a new area with a different new mechanic introduced. The simplest one is putting obstacles in your path or making you use the walls to bounce your black holes off of them so that they ricochet where you want them to go. Now, you have to be careful about hitting the wrong black hole by accident. You have to judge angles and distances and pick out which order makes the most sense to take the black holes out in so that you don't make any mistakes. Then there are the space tourists, who you'll be seeing a lot of. If you hit one of them, they'll get sucked into the black hole and you'll lose instantly because, you shouldn't murder. Eventually there are space aliens that fly around, or my personal favorite, wormholes, which require you to really do some visual calculus, trying to determine where your black hole will end up after you shoot it, and it transitions between multiple different wormhole portals. Most of these new mechanics add a nice layer of difficulty and complexity to the proceedings. If there's one that you find uninteresting or annoying, it's probably okay because each level is super quick, and it won't be long before that mechanic is either moved on from or remixed into something different. For what could have been a very simple, straightforward puzzle game, there's a lot going on here. Like I said, the story is surprisingly long. I kept thinking I must be close to the end, and there kept being more of it to play. Even better, in between every single level is a little bit of jokey dialogue setting up the next one. And in between areas, you get an entirely new cutscene to enjoy. Honestly, these cutscenes are the highlight of the whole game for me. They're fully animated, fluid, dynamic, and each one tells its own unhinged story about black holes and their effects on society that somehow weaves into the larger tapestry of the game. They are unhinged, they're very funny, it's a real reward getting to see another one of these each time, and each one lasts maybe a minute or two, so they're lengthy affairs. They didn't have to design cutscenes like this. No one would have missed these if this game just shipped, with a bare bones level progression, but having them, they add so much personality and really make Black Hole Havoc a game that is going to stick out in your mind. When you're finished with the story mode, there's also an arcade mode that challenges you to see how high a score you can get as things get progressively crazier. In most puzzle games, that would be the primary mode of play, but here it feels secondary to the story mode. There are also some achievements to go for and additional secrets you can try to discover on your own, all of which make this feel like a very complete package. I didn't quite click with Black Hole Havoc's gameplay at first. I was never a huge bust-a-move guy either, so maybe this style of puzzle game just isn't really my thing, but I really got more into it as they kept adding new and unique mechanics to the mix. It very much won me over by the end when it evolves into this bananas Dragon Ball Z-esque showdown that you must see to believe. I'll also add that while the crank controls are fine, I thought the button controls were just simpler and more obvious in this particular case, but your mileage may vary. Either control method is viable and totally optional, so it's up to you. In the end, I say Black Hole Havoc is more than the sum of its parts. It's a wacky puzzle game with a great art style and a sense of humor that goes a lot harder in places than it even needed to. And our final game of the season is Taria Como from Popseed Studio Inc. and Juvie Productions. If you're like me and you loved last week's Tiny Turnip, then you might feel at home with Taria Como. This is another platformer that features a unique method of traversal and exploration. You play as Taria, who has a prosthetic leg. In order to help her get around, she has a little robot who can attach to various surfaces attached to her by a rope. Once you're locked on to a wall or a ceiling, you can use the crank to extend and retract the rope, allowing you to climb up, lower yourself down, or swing across gaps. This game really impressed me for a few reasons. For one, it very much cares about story and characters. You're immediately introduced to a dystopian future world that isn't so different from ours, as well as Taria and her sister Como. Right up front, they set you up with a healthy amount of backstory and lore involving an evil medical company who's responsible for the loss of Taria and Como's parents. But it doesn't feel too clunky or overwhelming, and it's all expressed through dialogue with cute, charming character portraits accompanying the text boxes. Taria's prosthetic leg is an important part of the story, as is the destructive capitalism of this evil company, and to a lesser extent, the fact that Taria's sister Como has OCD. That's right, everybody, this game is woke. Seriously though, I have no doubt that if Taria and Como were on a more mainstream system than the Playdate, there would be 1,000 stupid threads on Twitter and Reddit complaining about these aspects. So in a way, I'm relieved that this game is only being shown to a group of niche, oddball console owners who will hopefully be a lot more charitable than that. I won't dwell on it too much though, all this is just to say that I found it refreshing to play a game that dealt with things like that in its story without feeling like it's pandering or being exploitative. Now, I suppose they could have given you a cool traversal robot without explaining that your character needs it to get around, but it adds so much more texture to the world and to what you're doing. You feel a connection with this robot, similar to the one I feel in games like Eco or Brothers, where you're directly tied to another character. Getting around with the robot can be tricky at first, and even later on sometimes. That is essentially the puzzle of this game, is determining where you need to swing from, how far your rope needs to go, and how to get the momentum you need to move forward. This is a platformer with hardly any jumping, and that's cool. If you touch any of the black sludge that you find all over the place, you'll get reset back to the start of the screen you were on. You can also dock the crank, which the game will recognize. When you do that, it'll allow you to pan around the environment to look for upcoming hazards. It's neat that a game uses the crank docking as an additional control mechanism. This technique did come in handy a few times, but sometimes I also forgot it was there and didn't get too badly punished for it. As is fitting of a game with such a thoughtfully developed world and characters, Taria Como has some of the most detailed backgrounds I've seen on Playdate. They could have gone a lot lighter on background elements in order to make the game run smoother, but I appreciate the attention to detail. It genuinely feels like you're inside a living world, and the game runs just fine as is. There's some slowdown anytime you move between areas, but that just feels more like a loading screen side effect than it does a game malfunction, and didn't have a negative effect on my experience. It's very satisfying just to find your way around the map in this game, swinging and grappling, kind of reminiscent of games like Bionic Commando or even Spider-Man, especially at a certain point when you get the ability to slow down in midair and shoot out a second rope to grapple from. It's tons of fun. You can tell they spent a lot of time perfecting that mechanic because it's what the whole game depends on. If you don't find that mechanic fun, then you're not gonna like Taria Como because that is pretty much all there is. This is sort of a Metroidvania in the sense that you are free to move between areas of the map as you see fit. It's an open environment to explore, and there are certain gated areas that you'll need to revisit in order to get past them after acquiring abilities later on. In spite of that framework, however, the game is pretty linear. There's no map screen, which worried me at first, but then I realized that you don't actually need one because you can just keep moving forward, and at times when the game wants you to move backward, it'll make sure you're aware of that fact. My biggest knock against Taria Como is that it kind of feels like the prologue to a larger game that doesn't exist. Which is not to say that it's too short. There's a decent amount of content in here, including some optional collectibles that you can challenge yourself to find and reach. Rather, it's the story and presentation itself that just feels like it's building up this larger, well-thought-out world, and what you get to play feels more like an introduction to all of that. There is a conclusion at the end. It's not like it ends on a cliffhanger or something, but it's less than what I expected. Like, here's a minor story spoiler, but for reasons I won't get into, you don't actually spend most of the game with your sister Como. You know, the Como from the and Como part of Taria and Como. Based on that title, I thought I was going to meet up with my sister at some point, and then that's when the game was really going to kick into gear, with me having to take care of her or have her help me with puzzles, but that never really happens. This is a criticism, but it's also kind of a compliment, I think, because it means that I wanted more of this stories and these characters. It's cute and charming in a very Pixar kind of way, but it's more like a Pixar short than a full-length feature. Still, Taria Como is a fine way for Season 2 to go out. It demonstrates the capabilities of this system to have meaningful, more in-depth stories, and to produce original gameplay with innovative control mechanics, and it looks good and sounds good while doing it. In terms of the Playdate's potential, this one really does give you a little bit of everything. Before we go, I will also give a quick update on Blippo Plus, the strange little alien TV channel that was given as a bonus in the first week of this system's life. Although Season 2 is now over, Blippo Plus is going to have new content dropping every single week at the same time for the next 6 weeks still. I don't think I'm gonna revisit it in order to tell you what I think about the finale on this channel, but now that we're a little over halfway through what I suppose you would call Blippo Plus's premiere season, I can tell you I'm really enjoying the app. It's very, very strange, but it's been fascinating every week to watch exactly how the story has progressed in the background and how it subtly influences all of the different channels and programs you can check out. And there are certain characters and motifs and musical notes that you will hear and see every time you check out Blippo Plus that really get in your head in a fun way. It's such a cool experiment, and I'm loving the community, the fan base that has developed around this thing. I do not know how successfully it's going to translate to larger audiences with the color version that's coming to other systems. I also don't know exactly how they plan on dropping content for that version, but the method of doing so here on the Playdate is perfect. And we did it! That's the end of Season 2 of the Playdate. This one was a little less substantial than Season 1, having had half as many games, but I think in this instance it is quality over quantity. Every week had at least one game that I really loved, Some of them were disappointments to me, but I still didn't regret checking them out and having those experiences. And now that it's gone by, it's kind of been this whirlwind of releases for 6 weeks straight. I'm excited to have more of a down period to go back and revisit and 100% complete some of the older titles that I could put more time into. Tiny Turnip remains my favorite game of the season, and it's not even close, but I have to say, overall, I think week 1 might have been the strongest, with Fulcrum Defender and Dig Dig Dino, I think both just being super solid games. This last week was a good one too. Black Hole Havoc is a creative and refreshingly weird puzzle game. And Taria Como is a sweet little platformer that hits a lot of the right buttons for me. I am excited to see what the creators of that game are going to do next. So overall, I definitely recommend Playdate Season 2. When you break it down by cost for the amount of games that you get, it's absolutely worth it. And since, as far as I know, it's the only way to get these games, it's not like you can buy Tiny Turnip standalone on the catalog store at this point. I have to recommend this. If you own a Playdate, I mean, this is the reason to buy a Playdate, is to play these seasons of games. So absolutely check it out if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments which game of Season 2 was your favorite overall, what were some of your disappointments, and do you feel like this one stacked up to Season 1? Was it worth the asking price? And as long as we're here, if you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see me do more of on this channel in the future, you can do that as well. I don't really know what I'm doing with this channel. I never really planned to become a specific Playdate review guy, but some people seem to like these, so I could do more of these or other video games. I do a lot of stuff that's not good for the algorithm because I don't stick to one topic, but let me know what you think about that. And if you like hearing me talk about video games, I'll also plug a new video game podcast that I just launched called Bad with Games that I think is a lot of fun. You can find that channel on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, and I'll put links in the description. Otherwise, you can stay here for more stuff coming up in the future, maybe more Playdate videos or other content. Let me know what you think. I love you all. And to all my Playdate heads out there, keep on cranking it and free Blinker.